Hi guys, this is Tech Howdy. I welcome you to this video tutorial on how to install SQL Server on a MacBook, iMac, or your MacBook Air. Now, to install SQL Server on a Mac, you need to download an application called Docker. Docker is a container application in which we will be installing our SQL Server. Prior to SQL Server 2017, if you wanted to install SQL Server on your Mac, you first had to create a virtual machine using a virtual machine software like VirtualBox, Parallels Desktop, VMware Fusion, or Boot Camp. And then after you have installed the virtual machine software, then you install Windows onto that virtual machine, and then finally install SQL Server. This would have been a valid option depending on the requirements. But with SQL Server 2017, you have the option to install SQL Server on a Docker container, and then you can use it on your MacBook, on your Mac. Yes, that's true. Starting with 2017 SQL Server, you can now install SQL Server directly onto Linux machine, and because Mac OS is a Unix-based system, which is Linux is a Unix-based system, you can run SQL Server on Linux and Mac. So let's go ahead and first install our Docker application or Docker software so that we can install SQL Server on it. Now, to download the Docker Community Edition, I have provided you the link in the video description. In case if you want to Google it, you can also Google it yourself. Once you are on the Docker download page, here you will see an option, please log in to download. Since I have already created an account, which is absolutely free to create, I will have the option now to download Docker. So I'm going to click on the Get Docker option. By doing this, my application will start to download. It is a DMG file which once downloaded, I will go ahead and run it. So now let's wait for the download to complete. So once you have completed downloading the Docker installation file, double click on the Docker DMG file and run the application. So now let's install Docker onto our applications. So drag and drop Docker on your applications folder. Now you can go to your applications and you should be able to see Docker in your applications. Double click and run Docker. So you'll get a message saying Docker is an application downloaded from internet. Are you sure you want to open it? Go ahead and click open. So you get a pop-up message saying welcome to Docker for Mac, and then just click next. So Docker will ask you for access. Docker needs some accesses to install networking components and links to the Docker apps. You will be asked for your password. Click OK. Enter your password. You don't have to keep your browser open. You can just go ahead and close it. So now you will see on the top bar of your back that you have Docker running. Docker is running, and now what we are going to do is we are going to increase the memory so that we can install our SQL Server. By default, Docker will have 2 GB of memory allocated to it. SQL Server needs at least 3.25 gigabytes to be on a safer side to operate smoothly. So what we are going to do is before we install SQL Server, we will go ahead and increase the memory to 4 GB. So to do that, go to your Docker application and click on Preferences. And then when you are on Preferences, go ahead and click on advanced options, and under advanced option you'll have the options to increase your memory. So what we are going to do over here is we are going to increase our memory limit to 4 GB, and what it's going to do is once it is increased, we can go ahead and we can install SQL Server. So let's click apply and restart. So what's going to happen now is Docker is going to update the changes and restart itself. So the memory has been updated and Docker has restarted, and now we can see that the application says Docker is running. Now the next step is to download SQL Server so that we can install it on our Docker container. Download SQL Server on our computer. We are going to make use of a terminal command. So go ahead and open your terminal and type the following command: docker space pull space Microsoft / MSSQL server Linux. Now this command will download the latest SQL Server for Docker image, and we can then install it on our Docker container. So go ahead and click enter. Now it's going to download the latest SQL Server image. Once the download is complete, we can go ahead and launch the Docker image. Okay guys, so finally SQL Server has been downloaded on our computer and on a Mac. And once it is downloaded, we are going to now launch the Docker image. But before I go ahead and launch the Docker image, I just want to let you know that the commands that I typed in my terminal will be provided in the video description, and you can copy paste it on your terminal window. Also, the downloading of SQL Server Docker image might take some time depending on the speed of your computer. So if you see that it is taking a while to download or for your download to get completed, please do not panic. Go and have some coffee and then come back. In the meantime, when it's downloaded, you will see the message that uh, the pull has been complete. So now let's go ahead and launch the Docker image. To, to launch the Docker image, we are going to run the following command, and I will first type the command and then I will explain to you what exactly does the command and all the attributes that I have used within the command mean. So the following command needs to be entered on your terminal: docker space run space -d. Now the -d is an optional parameter that launches Docker container in daemon mode. This means that it runs in the background and doesn't need its own terminal window. If you wish to run Docker in its own terminal window, then you can just omit this command, okay, and run the command without this -d option. But we will leave this -d option as we want it to run in the background rather than in its own terminal window. Then we type in the space --name space SQL underscore server underscore demo. Now --name and space SQL server underscore demo is the name of your container. This parameter will allow you to name your container, and this can be very handy when stopping or starting your container from the terminal, as we can target the container by its name. Now the -e, and within the quotation we have accept underscore EULA equals to Y. Now the Y shows that you agree with end user license agreement. EULA stands for end user license agreement. This is required in order to have SQL Server for Linux run on your Mac. Then we see -e, and we have within quotation your SA underscore password is equal to my password 123. Now the SA underscore password is a required parameter because you need to name the you need to provide a password to your container, and it is a must, so you cannot omit or skip this parameter. Secondly, SA, if you don't know, stands for System Administrator. And the password, you enter your password after the equal to sign. So I have entered the password, my password 123, and then we ended the quotation. Then we have space dash p space 1433 is to 1433 with a colon in between, which maps the local port uh, 1433 to port 1433 on the container. Now, this is the default port that our SQL server uses to listen to connection. Okay, so we are going to map this port 1433 to 1433 because our SQL server uses it. It's a default port. Now, finally, at the end, you will see Microsoft / MSSQL server.linux. This is basically the Docker image that we downloaded, and we are telling to use that specific Docker image that we downloaded. Now, let's go ahead and hit enter. So our we have launched our the Docker image. Now, in case if you get a error message or a message saying that saying that the password is not strong enough, uh, all you can do is you can just add a semicolon, or you could just add an exclamation at the end of your password. That's if I'm assuming everybody are smart enough to create a strong password, but if you're just testing the Docker container, then you can create a basic password like password 123 or my password. But if you get an error saying that the password is not strong enough, just add an exclamation at the end and you should be fine. So now we are going to check the Docker container. This is an optional step. You can skip this step, but we just want to make sure that Docker container is running. So the command that we are going to type is docker dash space ps. And as you see, if it's up and running, it should show something like this. So now what we are going to do is install SQL CLI. If you have already installed SQL CLI, then you don't need to do this step. But if you have not, then we need to install SQL CLI. And why you need SQL CLI? Because this tool will help you to run queries and other commands against your SQL Server instance. So in order to communicate with your SQL Server instances, you need to run queries, correct? You need to type queries and execute those queries. Now the SQL CLI will help us to run these queries. So we will install the SQL CLI by typing the following command: npm install space -g SQL-CLI, and then hit enter. Now, the reason I am getting this error is because I have not installed Node.js. If you have not installed Node.js and you run the npm command, then you are going to get this error as npm command not found. So let's go ahead and install Node.js and then run the SQL npm install command. So to install Node.js, we will go to nodejs.org, and we are going to install the latest version of Node.js. Okay, now close the browser. Now I'm going to run the command npm install -g space SQL-CLI and hit enter. And now as you see, npm command is recognized by your terminal because we installed node.js. Now this is another thing that I wanted you guys to know, that if you get an error like this saying that there is a permission issue, then all you have to do is you need to type in sudo command before the command npm space install space dash g sql dash cli, and then hit enter. And then it will ask you for the password, and then we are going to provide a password. You wouldn't be able to see the password because it is invisible, and just click enter after you've entered it. And now it's going to install the SQL CLI package for us so that we can execute our SQL queries uh, against our SQL Server instance. So we have successfully installed the SQL-CLI package, and now what we are going to do is we are going to connect to our SQL Server. We can start working on the SQL Server via the terminal window on our Mac. So let me just do the clear option here. And now what we are going to do to connect to our SQL Server, we are going to use the MSSQL, that's MS Microsoft SQL Server command, followed by our username, that is -u, which was SA, that is system administrator, and -p stands for password, and space the password that we created earlier in our while we were installing the instance of our server image. So our password was my password 123, and let's hit enter. So now as you see, our connection to our local host was done and it is successful. Now if you see, you will see that the terminal shows MS SQL here just before your uh, command line, so which means we have successfully connected to our SQL server. Now just let's run a quick test to check if SQL Server is up and running and you can query it. So let's run the following command. Select at version will give you the version of our SQL Server. And there it is. We have the latest version, which is Microsoft SQL Server 2017. That's running on our operating system, that's Mac. As I understand, many of you guys use SQL Server Management Studio to conduct your SQL Server operations, which is one of the best GUI softwares available from Microsoft. But since we don't have access to SQL Server Management Studio as of now on Mac, we are going to make use of something called as Azure Data Studio, that is available for us to download from Microsoft's website. And once you download the zip file, you can go ahead and extract the application. The link to download the file will be provided in the description of the video. Double click on Azure Data Studio, run the application. Once the application runs, all you're going to do is connect to your local host. For that, you can click on this icon here. But when you're logging in for the first time, you will have a screen something like this on your window. All you do is you type in your server's name, which is localhost, and then the authentication mode type will be SQL login, and the username will be SA, and the password that you use to create the instance of your server in Docker. So that was my password 123, and I'm just going to click connect, and there it is. So now we are logged into the uh, instance of our server. Now we can see our server that we created under Azure Data Studio. This is something like SQL Server Management Studio that we can use in order to communicate or conduct operations on our database. So go ahead, play around with it. You can go ahead and create new databases and you can create tables, columns, and you can run some queries. And you can also go ahead and go through different options available under Azure Data Studio. And if you have any questions, you can always use the comment section to share your questions, or if you find something that can help the community, also you can share it via the comment section. Thank you once again for watching. This is the end of the video tutorial for how to install SQL Server on a Mac. Thank you.